Well, in today's video, we're going to be talking about how the market value of different vehicles is actually determined and how you can determine what the market value on a vehicle is. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you're going to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you're going to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. So I just made a video talking about how you should never pay above market value on a car, and frankly you should try to pay below market value so that you can actually get a great deal on a car. Just because a car has a discount on it doesn't mean that it is actually being discounted off of actual market value. And so that's why I want to talk about how market value is actually determined on a vehicle, because there are a number of different factors. So the first thing that's going to help determine market value is going to be supply and demand. I know this is pretty self-explanatory, but it does need to be stated. So if you have higher supply with a vehicle and lower demand, then that means that prices will naturally fall. And then if you have the opposite, where you have really low supply and then high demand, well, prices will naturally increase in that case. And this is what we saw play out over the course of the last couple of years, because we saw in 2020 and 2021 prices continually increased because, well, supply was really low and demand was really high. And now in 2022 we've seen the opposite happen, where prices have fallen because supply is increasing and demand is decreasing. So that's the first thing. The next thing that is actually really important in terms of determining market value is going to be the transaction prices of vehicles that are brand new, that are of the vehicle that's being sold used. And this is something that actually weighs heavily on the used car market. So in our example, let's just say that a car is $50,000. And let's say that car is transacting for $55,000 on average brand new. That means that the used ones could potentially transact at around MSRP used, because the new ones are going for over MSRP. Again, this is something that we saw happen over the course of the pandemic, and frankly, it happens in normal markets as well. And so if the new cars are selling for over MSRP, then that means that the used cars could potentially also sell for over MSRP or close to original MSRP, because obviously buyers and dealers are going to be looking and going, okay, well, this is how much the new ones are going for, so the used one needs to be a little bit less than a new one. But depending on, the type of vehicle it is, the miles and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't necessarily have to be that much less than the new one. So all I need to know at this point is the transaction price, the average transaction price of brand new cars weighs heavily on the market value of those vehicles. And by the way, it does go in the opposite direction. If vehicles on average are being discounted a massive amount brand new, then that means that the used car values will reflect that. And this is something that dealers will look at consistently. When I worked at the dealership, this is something we did all the time. Like if we were to trade in a vehicle that was relatively new and there weren't a lot of transactions out there, we would go and look at the invoice price on that vehicle. We'd basically call up a dealer that sells those brand new and be like, what's the invoice price on this? And then, what's that minus holdback and everything, to see what their cost would be in that vehicle. And then we'd know as a dealership, okay, well, this is the lowest amount possible that a customer could get on this vehicle. So we better not pay that. We better pay a little bit under that so that we're fine in the vehicle, just in case the market on this isn't all that strong. And then that would allow you as a dealership to sell that vehicle for under original MSRP. So you're not asking, original MSRP on a used vehicle. Again, in a normal market, that's usually what happens. I know the market's been weird for the last couple of years, but this is something, and the reason I'm spending so much time on this point is this is something that weighs probably more heavily on the used car market than any other item. Now, some other factors that will play a role in determining the market value on a vehicle are going to be the condition of that vehicle on average. So if the average vehicle is in really good condition, then that will actually push up the market value. And if it's the inverse, where the average vehicle is in bad condition, then that'll actually push down the market value. But in that case, if you have one that happens to be in really good condition, then it kind of, it's like a bright shining light, and it could potentially, have a ridiculous value attached to it because there's just not a lot that are in great condition. And then other stuff like, mileage, and then, wear and tear on the specific vehicle, that's always going to be something that will determine market value. And then options on a vehicle will also determine market value. If a vehicle has more options than another one, then the one with more options generally will sell for more. That's not always the case, because sometimes options just aren't valued within certain markets. but that is something that could happen. And then something else that is really important is going to be overall availability with that vehicle or options that that vehicle has. So if a manufacturer drastically changes a vehicle from one model year to another and people don't like those changes, sometimes that can obviously boost market values. Or if a manufacturer does the opposite, which is what they usually try to do, and that is improve the vehicle over time, then that will obviously negatively impact the market values on the older vehicles. Now, there are a lot more items that are taken into account with determining the market value on a vehicle, but I don't want this video to be a million years long. So let's dive into what you can do to find the market value on a vehicle. First off, the thing that might sound pretty self-explanatory, but you still need to do is just look at what they're being posted for online. Now, obviously, sale price is not always going to be actual transaction price on a vehicle, but this will get you a rough idea of what people might think that a particular vehicle is worth, whether it's new or used. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to take the vehicle that you're looking at, take the VIN number, take the mileage, all that. If it's used, if it's new, you can still just take the mileage, even if it, like usually dealers will show like how much mileage a new car has. Maybe it's like 5-10 miles, and take that information and put it into a third party car buying site like, Carvana. I know we're all talking about how Carvana is, completely exploding, but they still will make cash offers on vehicles. CarMax, there's so many sites that do it, and just put that information in there and see what kind of cash offer you get on that vehicle. This will give you a rough idea of what wholesale value is going to be like on that vehicle. Again, even if it's brand new, because ultimately they've got to make an offer on everything because they're places that like to buy cars. And so now you'll have an idea of what wholesale is versus retail. And so then you'll know, okay, well, somewhere in between those two numbers is going to be the quote unquote market value of the car. Because obviously if you give a dealership an offer at wholesale, well, maybe they'll say yes if they really want to get rid of a vehicle, but chances are they're probably not going to say yes. So the next thing that you should do is actually look at forums that are basically based around that particular vehicle. Even vehicles that don't have, quote unquote, like normal enthusiast based will typically still have forums dedicated to them because owners just want to talk to other owners. And this is where you can see what others have paid for the vehicles. Now, obviously people can lie, but people typically don't. And so what you'll see is they'll make a post about, where they bought their vehicle from and how much they paid for it. And sometimes they'll even like break things down. Like I've seen forum posts where people will, post, the MSRP in the vehicle, and then they'll post the discount they got, or maybe they paid a market adjustment and then the dealer fees, everything associated with the purchase. And again, this isn't going to give you like the exact market value, but it'll give you a rough idea of what other people are paying for that car all around the nation. And so you can actually use this information to help you out greatly, because you could see that, oh, if I buy this car out of California, it's $5,000 more than if I bought this car out of, I don't know, Arizona. I'm just giving random examples, but there are always differences between different markets in terms of amounts paid. And so this actually puts you in a really good position to where you could then technically pay below market value for your particular region for a vehicle, even though you could be paying at market value or even slightly above market value in another region. So at this point, you've been studying the retail values on the vehicle you're looking at purchasing. You've also looked through forums so you can see what other people paid for the vehicle. And then finally, you've plugged it into some car buying apps to see what the rough wholesale value is on that vehicle. And so now you probably have, 3 different numbers. And on the one end, you're going to have, the retail value that's probably going to be at the high point. And then somewhere in the middle, you're going to have what people have paid for that vehicle. And then obviously at the bottom end, you're going to have the wholesale value. And so with this information, this will allow you to make an offer on a car that will be reasonable enough for a dealership to actually want to work with you, but it obviously will be basically putting you in a situation where you're not going to be overpaying for the vehicle, and you might potentially be able to buy it for under market value. So what you really need to know with these 3 numbers is that retail number, you don't want to pay that, obviously, because that means that you're going to be at the top end of the deal, which means that you're going to be paying more than what other people are paying. And like, nobody wants to do that, right? Now, if you look at the middle number, again, what people are saying that they paid on forums, then I think that that is a good starting place for you mentally to go, okay, this is what I will most likely have to pay for a car, but I still probably don't want to pay that for the vehicle because I want to get a great deal, not just the deal. And so you can take that value, take the wholesale value, and offer somewhere in between. And if you want to be real ballsy, then you can offer the wholesale value. The worst that a dealership can ever say is no. And you know what, maybe they will be rude enough to kick you out, but chances are they'll probably just give you a shocked face and they'll be like, are you kidding me? What are you, that's crazy. And then you can go, that's my offer. And then if they come back and say no, but then they give you a bigger discount, then, well, that's somewhere for you to work from. So in summary, there are a lot of different factors that will determine the market value on a vehicle, but the factor that typically weighs the most on this situation is going to be what that vehicle is going for brand new, because that is going to guide dealers and other parties that buy and sell that vehicle in terms of where they should price it at used. Now, obviously, there are vehicles that have been discontinued, and so you'd wonder, well, how's the market value going to be determined on that if it's something that isn't sold new anymore? Well, it'll then be determined value-wise based on supply and demand with that vehicle, condition, mileage, all that. And frankly, what typically happens once vehicles get old enough is they just sell based on what they are, what they provide. So if you have like a 15-year-old SUV that has 100,000 miles, it's probably just going to sell at the same exact price as every other 15-year-old SUV that has 100,000 miles on it. And so that's kind of also what happens once you get enough miles on a car and enough age on a vehicle as well. But with the stuff that is in that 5 to 10 year old range, the new vehicle price on that particular car typically will weigh more than anything else. And then when it comes to determining a market value for yourself, there are so many sources online now that'll help you do this. I mean, it's crazy. Like if you go back 20 years from today, you would not be able to get any of the information you can get today in terms of wholesale values, retail values, any of that. Like you would just have to walk into a dealership and basically be at the mercy of whatever that dealer would tell you. Whereas now you can walk into a dealership and you can tell them, what the invoice price is on their vehicle. A lot of times with everything that is online, you can tell them what the wholesale value is on their vehicle. So then you can make them an offer and go, here's a deal. I know you paid $15,000 for this car. You've got it posted for $18,000. I'm going to offer you $16,000. Take it or leave it, right? You have enough info to do stuff like that you wouldn't have been able to do just a couple of decades ago. So I think it's a great situation, not necessarily for dealers, but definitely for consumers. So hopefully that helps you guys out. And with that being said, I'll see ya.